Okay, so this alternative lifestyle project I started way back in 1976 after being greatly inspired by documentaries on TV like the series Disappearing World, which showed how traditional societies lived, had been treated, wiped out or reduced to almost nothing. I gave myself 30 years to further study and observe our very society, our history and the natural history of the earth, and at the same time endeavoured to come up with an alternative system, as I could see massive compiling problems with our modern society rapidly progressing into the future. In 2006, 30 years after I started my studies and observations, I tried to talk to the general public and to the so-called conservationists of my ideas of how we should all be living. And basically nobody wanted to know. It seemed to me that people had rocks for brains. Now, if my ideas had been implemented with other circular minds' ideas and knowledge in 2006, then the world by now could have been a very different place in which to live, and all of the multi-compiling problems massively reduced or even totally avoided. I think that there are now many people that are either experiencing or seeing our world and our modern societal system horrifically falling apart. I also think that almost all of the problems of our high-tech society today is because of our high-tech society today. And to prove this, I'm just going to give a comparison and compare the health and well-being of us to the hunter-gatherer people who lived in complete harmony with the earth and the natural, unique order and balance of life. Their world was maintained pristine, with an abundance of life and resource. But first, let's have a very quick look at these three illustrations, for which has great significance to the alternative lifestyle proposition. And there is a short video to explain each illustration to come. Okay, so this is a somewhat short and modified scientific chronology of the Earth, or timeline. It's also what I call the order and balance of life. And another way of showing and explaining the taxonomic classification of all life on Earth is with this, the evolutionary tree of life. Now, all of this humongous accumulated mass of combined knowledge that scientists are still studying and piecing together has everything to do with the new alternative lifestyle system, as all of this endeavours to truthfully explain the cosmos and the formulation of our solar system, the Earth itself and all of its incredible life, us inclusive. This, the second illustration, is from around 12,000 years ago in post-glaciation to the start of agriculture and our more recent history down to present day. And this is all about the alternative lifestyle system, of which I will later explain in the next video. Okay, so now to those hunter-gatherer people, some of which have migrated out of their homeland Africa around 80,000 years ago and spread over time to all corners of the world. Now, all of these people and so many more were still living in their Stone Age way of life right up to the agricultural revolution of that 12,000 years ago, and on many other lands up until around 500 years ago, where the remaining thousands of foraging populations came under the brutal control of European colonisation, being massacred and reduced to very isolated groups, or being massively suppressed from traditional culture and assimilated into white society. So what can we learn from these traditional cultures that used to be, or from what is left of them, and how do they compare to our modern way of life? Well, in the 1920s, an American dentist by the name of Weston Price found that the Native American people that had been dragged into white society were suffering from acute chronic rampant tooth decay. So curiously, he travelled out to native reservations, where the people had hardly seen a white guy, let alone eat his food, and found the most perfect dentition he had ever seen. Price then travelled the world observing traditional people that had been brought into white society and compared them to people left in their traditional way of life. His findings of degenerational health was in short astonishing. This is his book and the photos he took. It says here that buried skulls throughout Australia provide a dependable record of their physical excellence and splendid facial and dental arch forms. Look at the beautiful dentition of what Aboriginal people used to be, how they used to be. And this is what happened within the first generation of eating white man's food. Look at the thickness of these two black skulls compared to the white skull. The beautiful dentition of the Native American people. Now, all traditional people of the world once had large U-shaped palates of perfect teeth and perfect bone structure. And many of us today have a V-shaped palate of two big teeth at the front, twisted and massively deformed dentition and cavities of rotten teeth due mostly to what we eat. And these people, very, very different and no toothbrush. Now it is known that many of us today have lost almost a third of our bone density and mass when compared to Aboriginal people at colonial times. Our bones have become porous, brittle and weak. It is called osteoporosis or bone wasting. Many people today are now having to have bone joint replacements or are suffering with bone deteriorational diseases and spending a lot of time suffering in the dentist chair, of which does nothing to put right our physiology. It is only a cosmetic and pain-releasing fix. Now, there was a massive difference between the lives of hunter-gatherer people and the Europeans. With the natives there was not one machine or man-made chemical, no drugs, junk foods or any unnatural substances whatsoever. The air at their time was pure, fresh and clean. Water, yes, sometimes a problem, but they had no illnesses, diseases, disorders, allergies or psychological instabilities or almost any kind of suffering until the white man. Not even a skin blemish, pimples or acne. And yet their image is still today of savages that only lived to around 30 years of age, fought with each other with a club, were extremely brutal, uncivilized, and I've even had good old white people tell me that they even ate their babies. Well, the San people, or Khoisan, was a very large group of nomadic hunter-gatherers of South Africa that since agriculture have been forced to live only in the Kalahari Desert. And today, many of them have been reduced to poverty-stricken squalor, as has many traditional people around the world. These people are the San Kung, and was one of the most studied of all foraging societies that used to be. And they lived to an average age of around 70 plus years, and that was whilst living in the desert. Even the Inuit people, living in the sub-zero temperatures of the freezing north and thriving on an exclusive diet of raw animal flesh, lived well into their late 60s, even 70s. We now also know that the Hadza people of northern Tanzania can live into their 80s. We do not know the absolute age of others in idealistic conditions because of colonialism. Plus, foraging people didn't have calendars or birthdays, but I can see no reason why they should not have lived to a great old age. As for us today, most of our elderly are taken up to 10 prescribed medications daily to preserve life. As for hunter-gatherer babies, they could only be of natural birth, and there was no such thing as a dysfunctional breast. Rich, sustaining milk was always very close at hand. White anthropologists have been amazed by the calmness and ease of mother and infant. Babies would very rarely cry, and only for a few seconds. One would know exactly the baby's needs. Even very young children were shown how to nurture. Now in our society today, around 60% of first mothers-to-be have never even held a baby, let alone been shown what to do. I've seen white young mums shove a synthetic bottle of cow's milk into their baby's mouth, and leave the room, slamming the door for the baby to cry itself to sleep. Hunter-gatherer mothers would give birth around every 3 to 4 years, giving ample time for the body to recover, and for the baby to be up and running around before the next child. Breastfeeding with these people at their time stopped pregnancy. In foraging societies, it was not possible to conceive before the age of 19 to 20 years. The menstrual cycle was very slight and painless, and menopause and same-sex relationships was totally unheard of. Now, in our society today, mothers often give birth to the next child in even less than 1 year, and 1 in 3 babies are caesarean born. Girls now cop the menstrual cycle at around 13 years of age, of which is normally heavy, painful and intermittent because of abnormal hormonal disruption. The contraceptive pill interacts with the natural body functioning and upsets natural hormonal balance, which creates unpleasant side effects like bloating, lethargy, headaches, mood swings, depression, anxiety, and all the problems females now suffer, along with breast problems of feeding, mastitis, and cancer. Now, there was research of the chemically synthetic hormones and drugs that have been injected into the foods that we now eat, along with junk foods and other chemicals, of which have caused massive unnatural hormonal and nutritional microbial disruption. We now have massive same-sex attraction, gay relationships and mixed gender feelings, which is a very recent abnormality of our society. Same-sex relationships and even marriage has rapidly become the normal of our totally unnatural way of life. In traditional cultures, all of this and so much more was totally unheard of. In our society today, many children have to fend for themselves whilst both of their parents are at work, trying to earn enough money for some kind of standard of life. And this in itself brings all kinds of problems with junk foods, loneliness, social and cognitive skills for their children. There is now a massive increased workload of also keeping the house clean and tidy, cooking meals, washing clothes and family social activities. There is massive suicide rates and crime. In our society there is massive family breakdown, domestic violence, drug and alcohol addiction, massive increased cost to living, plus caring for family members with chronic ill health. Now, at the time of European invasion, Australian Aboriginal people could see animals on the distant horizon and stars that they talked about in the night sky that only when the white fellows had binoculars could they see. Aboriginal people had so much more strength and endurance in sports and athletics that the British banned all black people from taking any part in sporting activities or athletics. All foraging children, as they matured, were taught every vital aspect of life. The women would take all children up to a certain point for boys, gathering from a massive variety of foods, small animals, lizards, snakes, insects and grubs, along with roots, vegetables, tubers, edible flowers, fruits, berries, nuts and all plant-based foods. They ate every part of an animal, the intestines, organs, brains, most even drank and ate the stomach contents that was full of microbes. Nothing was wasted. Even many of the bones were used as tools or split to obtain the marrow. They collected seeds from various plant species and ground them into flour for breads or biscuits, and were the first people to do so. In coastal regions and around rivers and lakes, they found abundant foods of fish, crustaceans, shellfish, birds, turtles and eggs, lilies, seaweeds and many other aquatic species for food. Mouthfuls of water may have been full of nutrients and alive with micro-aquatic life. Foods in nature's pantry was once so abundant it only took around 3 to 5 hours a day to find. So these people had ample time to themselves for all pleasures and learning about their natural world, playing games and practicing, making hunting weapons and tools, weaving, telling stories. They had art and adorned themselves with ochre and jewellery. They made musical instruments, sang and danced. They had initiation and could always lean on each other and treated each other as brothers or sisters. They had no need for hospitals, police force or military, shops, industries or politics. There was no pollution and they left no waste. Nothing. We leave up to 10 to 12 billion tonnes every year. They looked after their own egalitarian social affairs and lived as one, uniquely connected to the diverse natural order and balance of life. Scientists today are still finding out much about foraging people, and there is research as to gut microbes. Foraging people have around twice the diversity and microbial mass thriving inside of their guts as us. One major difference is that foragers have one given area of which to live, and are always on the move within that area. Microbes in their trillions are also in these areas, but of certain types, and microbes, like all life, adapt and evolve to different areas and environments. By staying in the one area, the microbes adapt and conform to the life forms of the area. Now, with us today and travel, it is very different, as we meet trillions of other microbes of different areas. Even going to the local shops, there are many people from many different areas. So microbes are mixed from different areas and environments. So our guts are full of competing good and bad microbes. Our diets, drugs like antibiotics and chemicals also greatly affect the microbiome, creating all kinds of problems that only we suffer, and with massive ill health. So there is a massive difference between us of today and the not so primitive people of the past, who also had order and balance on the inside, and I call these people superior. Oh, and these people on the end here are the Andaman Islanders, of which I never mentioned. Now, why racism? What is so different between these people and us whites? Anthropologists have known that for the last 40 or so years that there is no such thing as race anymore. We are all of the exact same species, Homo sapien. We used to say race, but not today. This piece of chin bone is only found in us and not in any of our distant ancestors, and can be found in any of these people. Molecular science now connects all of us very, very closely together, and connects all of us back to these people of Africa. Skin colour or different facial characteristics are simply because of geographical variation over thousands of years of individual group isolation and diversification. Okay, mitochondria dysfunction. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of everything that goes on inside your body, and it is dysfunctioning because of all drugs, all man-made chemicals, inclusive of micro and nanoplastics, our diets, and just how we do live in our modern society with lack of circadian rhythm. Now, I was told by a doctor many years ago that because of our upright stance and bipedal locomotion, that we all now have bad backs. Well, none of these people had bad backs. They had no cancers, heart disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, mitochondrial dysfunction, or anything that we suffer. I think what makes a bad back, along with everything bad, is our very society and all the crap that goes with it. Okay, so now let's have a look at the next illustration. Get rid of that. Okay, so this is what I call the order and balance line, and goes directly into the new system. And this is the path that many of us took around 12,000 years ago, becoming agriculturalists. Now, many hunter-gatherers remained as hunter-gatherers with their animistic mythology. Some also grew foods as well as being hunters and gatherers, whilst others became subsistent farmers, even as herders, like that of the Maasai people. And I'm going to skip all that top lot, as that is all explained in another video. And what we are going to have a little look at is from around the last 100 or so years. So England's Industrious Revolution really put the wheels in motion for innovation and technology, of which today has gone literally ballistic. Oh, I've missed a page. Technologies we've already seen are not always a good thing. As technologies are created all of the massive problems we are now all faced with today. Within the last 100 or so years, we have massively and progressively increased our impact upon the Earth with rapidly fast increasing mass production and chemical saturation. We now have around 750,000 chemical compounds, of which were never before in existence, and only around 1% have ever been studied for health or environmental impacts. And so the air, water and food has become increasingly more toxic for all life. With a false sense of security, people of the world have become vastly overpopulated, with somewhere around 3/4 of the world's populations now still living in poverty. The material mass of everything man-made we have put on Earth is now even bigger than the entire biomass of the entire Earth. And what is left of ecosystems, forests, reef systems and the entire natural environment is more than ever rapidly disappearing because of rapidly increasing populations that feeds the very consuming system of lifestyle that has massively overtaken the Earth's natural systems for all life to exist. Okay, let's have a little look at this board. On this, some people have coined the Anthropocene. 1 billion people, well that was from around 1805. In 1957 when I was born, 2.8 billion people. Now that's not a bad figure. Down here I have 7 billion, but this board is a little old as that was from around 2013. And today, depending on who you believe, the world's population is now at either 8.3 or 11 billion people. So now let's just have a think. It took the entire population of the entire world to reach 1 billion in 1805, and today we will produce 1 billion extra people within the next 9 years. Domesticated animals, only 2% of all mammalian biomass. Well, that was in around 1905. Down here I have it at 92%, and today already 96%. So today there is only 4% of all wild mammals left against 96% of captive mammals and us. So as our uncontrolled populations rapidly increases, wildlife and nature is rapidly pushed out of existence, and the shrinking world becomes ever more increasingly toxic, with more carbon and chemical release to the atmosphere, increased deforestation and destruction, plus massive increases of city skylines, urban sprawls, manufacture and industry, plus infrastructural mass, monocultural crop production, and increases to air, shipping, road and freight transport, plus increased homelessness and even more mass poverty, of which we are now all starting to see in first world countries. In the early 80s, a small group of scientists travelled the world's most isolated places to try to find people without a chemical concoction within their bodies, and they found nobody. In 1978, the natural scientists told us all about global warming. 1987, told us all about global warming, with some scientists stating that we could all be facing mass extinction by 2050. And with the present frictions in the world, this is what we are all staring down the barrel of. The vital ingredients of life that our forebears once had means nothing to our system of today. What means so much more to us is not only innovation and technology, but the three major influences of power that has been passed down to our stock of today, which is delusion, currency, and ignorance. Here in our society, there is no order, there is no balance. Now, you know I started with those extremely intelligent hunter-gatherer people. Well, through our studies of them, they are now teaching us all how to live, because we now know to squash all of our consuming, polluting, money-making, corruptive, ignorant infrastructures, as we now know that our modern endeavours and high tech is not what is all cracked up to be, and is destroying the earth and us. So why is the hunter-gatherer way of life so important? Well, all of our evolved physiology comes from being passed down from our ancestors in Africa, over millions of years, and I explain far more also in a later video. Evolutionary adaptation happens very slowly. The hunter-gatherer way of life was coexistent to the natural environment. It was easy for foraging people to sustain and mould themselves to different environments, even when leaving Africa. Their cultures worked with nature. Our culture works against nature. Even today, most of the remaining foraging people just want to be left alone, but are still being oppressed, persecuted, killed and exploited for their lands and forests, for monocultural agriculture, cattle farming, timber, mining and mineral wealth, to supply the increasing demand of new products and modern population explosion. Now, what I have endeavoured to do is to design a futuristic system based upon the traditional cultures of our ancestral past, and incorporated only the very best of our modern innovations that can only advance a totally new way of life in keeping with our biological makeup and in correlation with the diverse natural order and balance. Where we have gone so totally wrong today is that our rapidly advanced developing mass of high tech has been allowed to saturate and delude the human mind. Our way of life today is extremely different to life in natural ecosystems and is causing environmental degradation on a massive scale. We are not robots. We are a biological species that simply cannot adapt to chemical saturation, synthetic commodities and the ways of our synthetic society. So we are now all faced with all the immense problems that our modern technologies have caused, and not only with our own debilitating state of health, but also to the entire health of the entire planet. Okay, so I think that's enough for this introduction. The next recording is all about the alternative lifestyle system itself, and thank you for listening.